I stood there frozen as the words left my daughter Amanda's lips. "Dad, your room stinks. When was the last time you even opened a window in there?" she said loudly, causing everyone at our family gathering to turn and stare. The laughter that followed cut through me like a knife. I had given this woman everything, including most of the mansion I built with my late wife. Yet here I was, being humiliated in front of everyone. I smiled weakly and excused myself. But something inside me broke that day. I knew things would never be the same again. My name is Junior Thompson. I built my construction empire from nothing but calloused hands and determination. Starting with small renovation projects in our neighborhood, I gradually expanded to commercial properties across 3 states. By my 40th birthday, I had become one of the most successful businessmen in our region. Margaret, my wife of 38 years, was my rock through it all. She managed our finances brilliantly while raising our daughter Amanda. Together we built our dream home, a 12,000 square foot mansion on 5 acres of prime land overlooking the lake. We designed every inch of that place together, from the grand spiral staircase to the cozy reading nook where Margaret spent her final days. Cancer took my Margaret 6 years ago. The disease moved swiftly, leaving me barely enough time to say goodbye to the love of my life. After her funeral, the mansion felt too big, too empty. Every corner held memories that twisted my heart with grief. I found myself retreating to our smaller guest suite, the one place that didn't scream her absence quite so loudly. When Amanda suggested she and her husband Patrick move into the main portion of the house, I welcomed the idea. They had a 2-year-old son, my grandson Tommy, and another baby on the way. The thought of having family fill those empty spaces again gave me hope. I imagined holiday gatherings, Sunday dinners, and watching my grandchildren grow up in the home their grandmother and I had built with so much love. "You can keep your suite, Dad," Amanda had said with a smile. "It will be perfect for you. Just enough space without all the maintenance worries. Patrick and I will handle everything else." I trusted her completely. After all, she was Margaret's daughter, had her mother's eyes and smile. I gladly signed the necessary paperwork to add Amanda and Patrick to the deed, thinking it would simplify things when I eventually passed. They took over the master bedroom, the main living areas, and most of the grounds. I was content with my modest suite, which included a bedroom, small sitting area, and private bathroom. At first, everything seemed wonderful. I had dinner with them several times a week, played with little Tommy, and enjoyed the company. But gradually, things began to change. Dinner invitations became less frequent. When I ventured into the main house, conversations would abruptly halt. Sometimes I'd catch Amanda and Patrick exchanging glances when I spoke, as if they were silently communicating something about me. Still, I made excuses for them. They were busy with their growing family and taking over more responsibilities at the company. I told myself that was why they had started hosting business associates and friends without including me. I convinced myself it was normal for them to redecorate rooms I had shared with Margaret without consulting me first. But the truth hit me hard that Sunday afternoon when Amanda made her cutting remark about my room. As I stood there with everyone staring, I suddenly realized I hadn't just given up the master bedroom or the living room. Somehow, I had surrendered my dignity as well. The mansion I built brick by brick had become the place where I was now treated like an unwelcome tenant, rather than the father who had sacrificed everything for his family. The day after the stinking room comment, I decided to speak with Amanda privately. I needed to understand why she would humiliate me that way and hopefully clear the air between us. I picked up a bouquet of yellow roses, her favorite since childhood, and walked to the main house around lunchtime. I knocked on the front door of what used to be my own home, something that still felt strange even after 4 years. Patrick answered, looking surprised and slightly annoyed. "Junior, we weren't expecting you today," he said, not moving to let me in immediately. "I just wanted to have a quick word with Amanda," I explained, holding up the flowers. "Is she around?" Patrick hesitated before stepping aside. "She's in the sunroom with her friend Stephanie. They're discussing the charity gala, so try not to interrupt for too long." I made my way through the house, noting how different it looked now. Margaret's antique furniture had been replaced with modern pieces that felt cold and impersonal to me. Family photos that once lined the hallway were gone, replaced with abstract artwork I didn't understand. When I reached the sunroom, I heard Amanda speaking before I turned the corner. "He's getting worse, Steph. The smell in his room yesterday was unbearable. I think he's forgetting to shower regularly. Mom would be horrified if she could see him now." I froze. Flowers clutched tightly in my hand. "Have you considered assisted living?" Stephanie asked. "My father-in-law fought it initially, but he's so much happier now. They have people to clean for him, remind him to bathe, make sure he takes his medications. Patrick and I have been researching some places," Amanda replied. "There's a really nice facility about 20 minutes from here. They have an opening next month that we're considering." My heart pounded painfully in my chest. Assisted living? They thought I needed to be in a home? I was only 67 years old and in perfect health aside from the occasional stiff knee. I exercised daily, handled my own finances, and until recently, had been actively involved in running a multi-million-dollar business. I cleared my throat loudly before entering the room. Both women looked up, surprise, and something like guilt flashing across Amanda's face. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she asked, standing quickly. "I wanted to talk to you about yesterday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "About what you said about my room." Amanda glanced at Stephanie, who took the hint and excused herself. "I'll call you later about the gala details," Stephanie said as she gathered her things and left. Once we were alone, I handed Amanda the flowers. "I wanted to clear the air between us. I was hurt by your comment yesterday." Amanda set the roses aside without really looking at them. "Dad, I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I'm concerned. Your room really does have an odor, and it's not the first time I've noticed it. Are you using those shower gels I bought you? Are you changing your sheets regularly?" "Amanda, I shower every morning. I do my own laundry weekly. The cleaning service changes my sheets every Tuesday," I responded, feeling defensive and increasingly angry. She sighed dramatically. "Dad, I think you might be getting a bit confused about these things. It happens at your age, Mrs. Reynolds told me she saw you walking to get the mail in the same clothes 3 days in a row last week." Mrs. Reynolds was our nosy neighbor who had been trying to get my attention since Margaret's funeral. She had a habit of embellishing stories. "I have 3 identical blue shirts, Amanda. They're comfortable for lounging around. See, that's exactly what I mean. You're not even aware of how it looks to others. Mom was always so particular about appearances. She would be concerned if she could see how you're living now." The mention of Margaret in this context felt like a slap. "Your mother would never judge me for wearing comfortable clothes in my own home." Amanda leaned forward, placing her hand over mine, in a gesture that felt more condescending than comforting. "Dad, Patrick and I have been talking. We think it might be time to consider some changes. There are some wonderful communities for seniors where you could have friends your own age, activities, and people to help you with daily tasks." I pulled my hand away. "You want to put me in a home? Because my room allegedly has an odor?" "It's not just that," she said, looking exasperated. "You seem lonely. You forget things sometimes. Last month you missed your dentist appointment, remember? And the investment opportunity you were so excited about last year turned out to be nothing. We're worried about your decision-making." I stared at my daughter, suddenly seeing her through new eyes. The investment she mentioned had indeed been a poor choice on my part, but it had been a small one that cost me less than $10,000. A drop in the bucket of my overall wealth. "I'm not senile, Amanda, and I'm not ready for a nursing home." She winced at my bluntness. "Not a nursing home, Dad. A retirement community. Independent living with support. Patrick and I just want what's best for you." As I left the sunroom, I noticed Patrick hovering near the doorway. He'd clearly been listening to our entire conversation. The concerned look he exchanged with Amanda told me everything I needed to know. They weren't just idly discussing the possibility of sending me away. They had a plan, and it was already in motion. On my way back to my suite, I spotted my grandson Tommy playing with building blocks in the family room. He looked up and grinned at me. "Grandpa, look at my tower." I forced a smile and spent a few minutes admiring his creation before continuing to my room. Once inside, I closed the door and took a deep breath, examining my surroundings carefully. The suite was immaculate. I had always been fastidious about cleanliness. a habit from my construction days when Margaret insisted I leave worksite dirt at the door. There was no odor that I could detect, but I opened the windows anyway and sprayed some of the air freshener Amanda had given me for Christmas. As the artificial pine scent filled the air, I felt my first real stirrings of anger. The stinking room comment hadn't been about hygiene at all. It had been the opening salvo in their campaign to remove me from my own home. Over the next few weeks, I began paying closer attention to Amanda and Patrick's behavior. Now that my eyes were open, I noticed things I had previously overlooked or excused. One Tuesday morning, I decided to visit the company headquarters. Though I had officially stepped back from daily operations 3 years ago, I still maintained an office there and held the title of Chairman Emeritus. Amanda served as CEO, with Patrick as CFO, an arrangement I had endorsed believing they would honor Margaret's and my legacy. When I arrived, my longtime assistant Janet looked startled to see me. "Junior, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you today," she said, quickly minimizing something on her computer screen. "Just thought I'd check in, see how things are going," I replied casually. "Is my office still where I left it?" Janet smiled nervously. "Of course. Though Amanda has been using it for client meetings occasionally, let me make sure it's available." She made a quick phone call, speaking too quietly for me to hear, then nodded. "All yours. Can I get you some coffee?" My office looked different. My family photos were gone from the desk. The bookshelves had been rearranged, and a new computer sat where my old one had been. It felt more like a hotel room than a space that had been mine for over 30 years. I spent the morning reviewing recent project files Janet reluctantly provided. What I discovered disturbed me deeply. The company had shifted away from the quality-focused approach Margaret and I had built our reputation on. Cheaper materials were being used, projects were being rushed, and profit margins were being squeezed to dangerous levels. Around noon, I decided to join the executive lunch meeting that had been a company tradition since I founded the firm. As I entered the conference room, conversations abruptly halted. "Dad," Amanda said, clearly surprised. "We didn't know you were coming today. Thought I'd check in on things," I replied, taking my old seat at the head of the table. Patrick quickly stood. "Actually, Junior, I usually sit there now. Board decision last quarter, for clarity in the chain of command." I felt every eye in the room on me as I moved to an empty chair at the side of the table. The conversation resumed, but it was obvious they were carefully editing what they discussed in my presence. After lunch, I made my way to the legal department to speak with Harold Fitzgerald, our corporate counsel, who had been with the company almost since its inception. "Junior," he greeted me warmly, genuine pleasure in his eyes. "What brings you down to the dungeon?" "Just checking on some things, Harold. Mind if I close the door?" Once we had privacy, I asked him directly about the company's current status. Harold's normally cheerful expression turned serious. "I've been meaning to call you, but Amanda assured me you were fully briefed on all developments." "Pretend I'm not," I said. "Tell me what's been happening." Over the next hour, I learned that the company had taken on significant debt to finance a series of acquisitions I knew nothing about. Several of our most loyal clients had taken their business elsewhere after disputes over quality. And most disturbing of all, Amanda and Patrick had quietly changed the company bylaws to reduce the power of the chairman position, effectively sidelining me completely. "This was all approved by the board?" I asked, stunned. Harold looked uncomfortable. "The board composition has changed considerably over the past year. Several long-standing members retired and were replaced by Amanda's recommendations, including my seat as chairman." He nodded, reluctantly. "You're still listed as Chairman Emeritus, but it's largely ceremonial now. The paperwork indicated you had health concerns and wished to step back completely. It has your signature." I asked to see the document. The signature looked like mine, but was slightly off, as if someone had carefully practiced and forged it. I said nothing to Harold about my suspicions, but asked him to quietly provide me copies of all major company changes over the past year. Before leaving his office, I asked one more question. "The mansion deed, Harold. Does that fall under corporate assets, or is it still my personal property?" Harold looked relieved to have a straightforward legal question. "The mansion remains your personal property, Junior. You added Amanda and Patrick to the deed, but you still own 60% interest. They can't sell or significantly modify it without your consent. On my way out of the building, I stopped by the accounting department to visit another old friend, Susan Martinez, who had managed the company's books for decades. "I need a favor, Susan," I said after exchanging pleasantries. "I'd like a complete record of all personal and company financial transactions for the past 18 months. Susan's eyes widened. "That's a lot of data, Junior." And Amanda specifically instructed that financial matters should go through her or Patrick first. "I'm still the majority shareholder, Susan, and I'm still your boss, regardless of title changes." She nodded slowly. "Give me 48 hours. I'll compile everything and send it securely to your personal email, not your company account." When I returned to the mansion, I found a landscaping crew tearing out Margaret's beloved rose garden, replacing it with what looked like the beginnings of a swimming pool. "Who authorized this?" I asked one of the workers. "Mr. Patrick signed the contract last week," the foreman explained. "Said they wanted it ready for a big 4th of July party." Margaret had tended those roses herself for 25 years. The yellow climbing roses had been her pride and joy. Now they lay discarded in a pile, waiting to be hauled away. I retreated to my suite, feeling physically ill. As I sat in my small sitting area, I heard Amanda and Patrick return home. Their voices drifted through the vent system that connected the main house to my suite. "Did you see Dad was at the office today?" Amanda said. "Janet called me immediately," Patrick replied. "What was he doing there?" "No idea. But Harold said he was asking questions about the company reorganization and the mansion deed." "Do you think he suspects something?" Patrick's laugh was dismissive. "What does it matter if he does? Everything's legal. He signed the paperwork." "He didn't really look at what he was signing," Amanda said, her voice smaller now. "I'm not sure he would have agreed if he understood what it meant." "Too late now," Patrick responded coldly. "Besides, we're just accelerating the inevitable. He's not capable of running things anymore. Remember that project in Millfield last year? His outdated insistence on those expensive materials nearly cost us the contract." "I know. But still." "No buts, Amanda. We've discussed this. The company is ours now, and once we get him settled in Sunny Pines, the mansion will be too. Tommy needs a proper yard to play in, and I'm tired of feeling like guests in our own home." Their voices moved further away until I couldn't hear them anymore, but I'd heard enough. They had been systematically stripping me of everything I'd built, including forging my signature on company documents. And now they were accelerating their plans to move me out of my home completely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Margaret, about how disappointed she would be in what our daughter had become. Margaret had always emphasized the importance of integrity in business and in life. She would never have recognized the woman who was planning to discard her father like an outdated piece of furniture. As dawn broke, I made my decision. I would not go quietly into any retirement home. I would not surrender what remained of my dignity or the company Margaret and I had built through decades of hard work. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I called my personal attorney, David Wilson. David and I went back 40 years, to when we were both just starting our careers. He had handled all my legal matters since before the company was even incorporated. "I need to meet you somewhere private," I told him. "Not your office, not my home." David suggested a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. When I arrived, he was already seated in a booth at the back, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him. "You look terrible," he said by way of greeting. "What's going on?" I spent the next hour detailing everything I had discovered. The company changes, the forged signatures, the conversations I'd overheard about putting me in a home. David listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a small pad. "This is serious, Junior," he finally said. "If what you're saying is true, Amanda and Patrick could be charged with fraud, forgery, and elder abuse." "Elder abuse? I'm not some helpless old man," I protested. "In legal terms, anyone over 65 who's being exploited by family members is considered a victim of elder abuse," David explained. "And make no mistake, you are being exploited." I shook my head. "I don't want to press charges against my own daughter. I just want to protect what's mine and regain control of my life." "We can start with a forensic audit of the company books," David suggested. and I'll have my associate check the county records for any property transactions involving your name or the company in the past 2 years. Do it discreetly, I warned. I don't want them to know I'm investigating yet. Of course. In the meantime, don't sign anything they put in front of you, and start documenting everything, Junior. Keep a journal of conversations, take photos, save emails. We need to build a clear picture of what they've been doing. Over the next 2 weeks, I followed David's advice meticulously. I kept a detailed journal of every interaction with Amanda and Patrick. I photographed changes to the property, including the destruction of Margaret's garden, and I set up recording devices in my suite to capture any conversations that might filter through the vents. Susan from accounting came through with the financial records as promised. What they revealed was worse than I had imagined. Beyond the company mismanagement, Amanda and Patrick had been systematically draining my personal accounts. Small transfers at first, then increasingly larger sums, all under the guise of investment opportunities or property management. Meanwhile, their own lifestyle had become increasingly lavish. A new vacation home in Aspen, luxury cars, private school tuition for Tommy, who was only 6 years old, all funded with money that should have been reinvested in the company or preserved for my retirement and their eventual inheritance. As difficult as these discoveries were, what truly broke my heart came from an unexpected source. Marta, the housekeeper who had worked for us since Amanda was a child, asked to speak with me privately one afternoon. "Senor Junior," she said, her eyes downcast, "I must tell you something, but I am afraid I will lose my job." "You can tell me anything, Marta. I won't let them fire you." She twisted her hands anxiously. 3 weeks ago, before the party, Miss Amanda asked me to not clean your rooms properly, to skip changing the sheets, to use only water, no soap, when wiping surfaces. I stared at her, uncomprehending at first. "Are you saying Amanda deliberately wanted my rooms to be unclean?" Marta nodded miserably. She said it was important for some reason, that the family needed to notice certain things. I did as she asked for 2 days, but then I could not continue. It was wrong. I have cleaned properly since then, but I felt you should know. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The stinking room comment hadn't been just a casual observation or even a genuine concern. It had been a calculated setup, part of their campaign to convince everyone, including me, that I was no longer capable of caring for myself. That evening, I met again with David to share what I had learned. He had discoveries of his own. "They've been laying groundwork for months," he confirmed. "I spoke with your doctor. Apparently, Amanda called him 3 times since January, expressing concerns about your memory and cognitive function." "What?" "I just had my physical in March. Dr. Stevens said I was in excellent health for my age." David nodded. "And he told Amanda the same thing. But she kept pushing, asking about early signs of dementia that might not show up on standard tests. They need me to be incompetent for their plan to work," I realized. "If I'm declared mentally unfit, they could take control of everything legally." "Exactly. And they've been building a case. The comments about your hygiene, the missed appointments they likely deliberately confused you about, the so-called poor investment decisions. So what do we do?" David leaned forward. "We have several options. We could confront them with what we know and try to negotiate a settlement. We could file for an emergency injunction to protect your assets. Or we could play along temporarily while we gather more evidence." I considered the options carefully. How long would it take to secure my assets? To do it thoroughly? 2 to 3 weeks. We need to establish new accounts they don't have access to. Possibly create a trust to protect the bulk of your wealth. And definitely revisit your will and advance directives. "Let's do that first," I decided. "I'll continue documenting everything while you set up the legal protections. Once those are in place, then we can decide how to confront them." What I didn't tell David was that I was developing a plan of my own, one that would teach Amanda and Patrick a lesson they would never forget. The breaking point came 3 days later. I was sitting in the garden, in a small corner that had escaped renovation, reading a book. Amanda approached with her friend Stephanie, not noticing me partially hidden by a large hydrangea bush. "The process is taking longer than we expected," Amanda was saying. "Dad's doctor refuses to cooperate. Says there's absolutely nothing wrong with him cognitively. What about getting a second opinion? Stephanie suggested. We tried. 2 other doctors said the same thing. Apparently being stubborn and set in your ways isn't the same as being incompetent, Amanda said with a bitter laugh. So we're going with Plan B. Patrick has convinced the board that Dad's interference is damaging the company. They're voting next week to remove his access completely. Can they do that? Didn't he found the company? Legally, yes. He signed over operational control years ago, and the recent bylaw changes give the board authority to restrict access for anyone deemed disruptive to business operations. And the house? Any progress there? Amanda sighed. That's trickier. We're on the deed, but he still owns majority interest. Unless he agrees to sell or transfer ownership, we're stuck with him underfoot. The retirement community plan is our best option, but he's fighting it. My mom used the medication approach with my grandmother. Stephanie offered casually. Nothing harmful, just something to make her more compliant, more open to suggestions. There was a long pause before Amanda responded. I've considered that. Patrick found some anti-anxiety medication that has confusion as a side effect. We could tell everyone he's been declining rapidly. Exactly. Then when you suggest the retirement community again, people will understand why it's necessary. I sat frozen behind the bush, my book forgotten in my lap. My own daughter was discussing drugging me without my knowledge or consent, drugging me to make me appear confused and incompetent. In that moment, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about money or control anymore. This was about my fundamental dignity as a human being. Amanda and Patrick weren't just pushing me aside. They were willing to destroy my mind to get what they wanted. I waited until they moved away before returning to my suite. With shaking hands, I called David. I need to accelerate our timeline, I told him. How quickly can you secure everything? Most of it's already done, he assured me. The new accounts are set up. The trust documentation is ready for your signature. What's happened? I'll explain later. Just tell me what else you need from me right now. I need you to sign the trust documents and the revised will. And we should record a video statement while you're clearly of sound mind, just in case they try to challenge things later. I'll meet you at your office in an hour. And David, I need one more thing. Find out when the next board meeting is scheduled. I want to be there. As I packed a small bag with essential documents and irreplaceable family photos, I glanced around the suite that had become both my refuge and my prison. Amanda's cruel comment about it stinking now made perfect sense. It had never been about hygiene. It had always been about control. I looked at the framed photo of Margaret on my bedside table. You always said our daughter was headstrong, I whispered to my late wife's smiling image. But I don't think either of us imagined she would become this person. I carefully wrapped the photo in a soft cloth and added it to my bag. Then I left the suite, closing the door quietly behind me. As I walked through the mansion one last time, I realized I wasn't just leaving a building. I was leaving behind the life Margaret and I had built together. But I was also leaving behind the pain and humiliation of recent months. It was time to show Amanda and Patrick exactly who they were dealing with. I might be older, but I was far from finished. The following Monday, I arrived at company headquarters 30 minutes before the scheduled board meeting. Janet looked up in surprise as I walked past her desk. Junior, the meeting isn't until 10. I know, I replied calmly, but I have some materials to set up first. I entered the boardroom and began distributing folders at each seat. Each contained copies of financial records, evidence of the forged signatures, and a summary of the legal actions I was prepared to take if necessary. At precisely 10 o'clock, the board members began filtering in, followed by Amanda and Patrick. Amanda stopped short when she saw me seated at the head of the table. Dad, what are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. I'm still chairman of this company, regardless of what paperwork you may have forged, suggesting otherwise. Patrick's face reddened. That's a serious accusation, Junior. Indeed it is. One I'm prepared to back up with evidence. Please, everyone take your seats. We have much to discuss. The board members, mostly longtime business associates, exchanged uncomfortable glances but complied. Amanda and Patrick reluctantly sat down as far from me as possible. Before we begin the regular agenda, I said. "I'd like to address some concerning developments within our company. Please open the folders in front of you." As they reviewed the documents, expressions of shock and dismay spread around the table. Amanda stared at me with a mixture of anger and fear. "These are private company documents," she protested. "You had no right to access them. I founded this company, Amanda. I built it from nothing into what it is today. Everything in those folders represents a betrayal not just of me, but of every principle your mother and I established for this business." I turned to address the full board. "As you can see, there have been numerous financial irregularities under the current leadership. Quality standards have been compromised. And most seriously, documents bearing what appears to be my signature were submitted without my knowledge or consent." One of the board members, Frank Goodman, looked up from the papers. "Is this true, Amanda? Did you forge your father's signature on these documents?" Amanda's face had gone pale. "We had verbal authorization. Dad's memory isn't what it used to be. Sometimes he forgets conversations we've had." "My memory is perfectly intact," I countered, "as 3 separate doctors have recently confirmed. Documentation of those medical evaluations is on page 12. Patrick attempted to take control of the situation. This is ridiculous. Junior is clearly upset about some of the necessary changes we've had to make to modernize the company. Change is difficult for people of his generation. Change is one thing," I replied evenly. "Fraud is another, as is elder abuse, which is what your plans amount to." The room fell silent. Frank Goodman cleared his throat. "What plans are you referring to, Junior?" I looked directly at Amanda. "Would you like to tell them, or should I?" When she remained silent, I continued. "My daughter and son-in-law have been systematically undermining my authority in this company while simultaneously attempting to have me declared mentally incompetent. Their ultimate goal was to have me committed to a retirement home against my will, possibly with the assistance of medication administered without my knowledge, so they could take complete control of both my company and my personal assets." Gasps echoed around the table. Frank Goodman, who had known me for 30 years and had attended my wedding to Margaret, looked personally offended. "Is this true?" he demanded of Amanda. "Of course not," she sputtered. "Dad is twisting things. We've been concerned about his well-being, that's all. He's been living in a single room of that big house, letting it fall into disrepair." "Interesting perspective," I said mildly, "especially given that you and Patrick occupy over 80% of the mansion, have been renovating it without my consent, and recently destroyed your mother's rose garden to install a swimming pool." "We thought you'd be pleased," Patrick interjected. "The pool is for Tommy and the baby. Your grandchildren don't," I said, my voice suddenly hard. "Don't you dare use my grandchildren as shields for your greed." I turned back to the board members. "I have no intention of pressing criminal charges at this time. That would only damage the company Margaret and I worked so hard to build. Instead, I am exercising my rights as majority shareholder to make the following changes, effective immediately." I outlined my decisions clearly. Amanda and Patrick would be removed from their positions as CEO and CFO. The board would appoint an interim leadership team from among our most experienced executives. A complete audit would be conducted, and any misappropriated funds would be repaid to the company. "You can't do this," Patrick protested. "The bylaws clearly state." "The bylaws you illegally modified using my forged signature have been invalidated," I interrupted. "My attorneys have already filed the necessary paperwork with the state." Amanda stared at me, tears welling in her eyes. "Dad, please. We were just trying to protect the company. You haven't been involved for years. You don't understand how things work now." "I understand perfectly how things work, Amanda. I understand that you and Patrick saw an opportunity to take what wasn't yours. I understand that you were willing to destroy my reputation and possibly my mind to get what you wanted." I stood up, gathering my papers. "The board can continue this meeting to discuss implementation of the changes I've outlined. I have other matters to attend to." As I reached the door, Amanda called out, "Dad, wait. We need to talk about this." I turned back one last time. "Yes, we do. But not here, not now. I suggest you both come to the mansion this evening at 7. We'll discuss your living arrangements then." The drive back to the mansion was oddly peaceful. For the first time in months, perhaps years, I felt fully in control of my life again. The confrontation had been difficult but necessary. Now came the second phase of my plan. When I arrived home, I found Marta cleaning the main living room. "Senor Junior, are you all right? You look different today." "I'm better than I've been in a long time, Marta. But I need a favor. Could you take the next 2 weeks off? With pay, of course." She looked confused but agreed. "Is everything okay with the family?" "It will be," I assured her. "Eventually. But some changes are coming, and I thought you might prefer to be away when they happen." After Marta left, I walked through the mansion methodically, taking photos of every room. I wanted to document exactly how Amanda and Patrick had changed the home Margaret and I had built together. Then I called a real estate agent I had worked with on commercial properties in the past. "Linda, how quickly can you list a property of this size? For you, Junior, I could have it on the market by tomorrow." "Are we talking about a commercial building?" "No, my home. The mansion on Lakeside Drive." There was a pause. "Your home? Are you sure? That place has been in your family for decades." "I'm sure, and I want to price it to sell quickly." By the time Amanda and Patrick arrived that evening, I had signed the listing agreement, and Linda had already arranged for professional photographers to come the following morning. They entered looking defensive but slightly smug, as if they had spent the afternoon convincing themselves they could still salvage their plans. "Dad," Amanda began, her voice artificially gentle, "we need to discuss what happened today. I think there have been some misunderstandings." "No misunderstandings," I replied. "You and Patrick attempted to steal my company through fraud and were planning to have me declared incompetent so you could control my personal assets as well. The only question now is how we move forward." Patrick stepped forward. "Junior, be reasonable. Everything we did was with the company's best interests at heart. And drugging me without my consent, was that for the company's benefit too?" Amanda at least had the grace to look ashamed. "That was never going to happen. It was just talk." "Talk I overheard clearly enough," I said. "But that's not why I asked you here tonight. I wanted to inform you personally that I'm selling the mansion." Their expressions of shock would have been comical under different circumstances. "You can't sell it," Patrick protested. "We live here. We have rights. You have a 30-day notice to vacate, which I'm delivering verbally right now. The formal written notice will arrive tomorrow. As for your rights, you own 40% interest in the property, which means you'll receive 40% of the proceeds from the sale after the mortgage is paid." "There's no mortgage," Amanda said. "The house is paid for." I smiled thinly. "It was paid for. I took out a new mortgage last week. The funds have been placed in a trust for my grandchildren's education. They'll receive it when they turn 21, provided they maintain certain academic standards." "You're punishing your own grandchildren because you're angry with us?" Amanda's voice rose incredulously. "On the contrary, I'm ensuring they have opportunities regardless of what happens to this company under your leadership. And I'm teaching them, through you, that actions have consequences." Patrick's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is insane. You're destroying your own family out of spite." "No, Patrick. You and Amanda have been destroying this family for years. I'm simply refusing to be your victim any longer." Amanda stepped closer, tears streaming down her face now. "Dad, please. Mom would hate this. She loved this house. It was the wrong thing to say. Don't you dare invoke your mother's memory to manipulate me. Margaret valued integrity above all else. She would be heartbroken to see what you've become." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stepped back, genuinely shocked. "Where will you go?" she whispered. "That's no longer your concern. My life is my own again, and I intend to live it on my terms." Patrick moved toward me menacingly. "You think you've won? This isn't over." I regarded him calmly. "Actually, it is. Unless you'd like me to reconsider my decision not to press criminal charges. Fraud and elder abuse carry significant penalties in this state." He stopped, uncertainty replacing anger. "You have 30 days to find new accommodations," I continued. "I suggest you use the time wisely. The first prospective buyers will be viewing the property this weekend." As they left, I could hear Amanda sobbing and Patrick attempting to reassure her. For a moment, I felt a twinge of doubt. Was I being too harsh? Then I remembered the conversation about drugging me. about making me appear confused and incompetent so they could ship me off to a facility while they enjoyed the fruits of my labor. No, I wasn't being too harsh. I was finally standing up for myself. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The mansion sold in 11 days, far faster than even Linda had anticipated. A tech entrepreneur from California paid well above asking price, with the stipulation that he could take possession in 30 days. Amanda and Patrick were livid when they learned how quickly the sale had gone through, but there was nothing they could do. They had already been removed from their positions at the company, though I had arranged for Patrick to be offered a lower-level management position rather than terminating him completely. He had declined, preferring to seek employment elsewhere. During the 30-day escrow period, I met with David regularly to finalize my plans. We established a new trust for my personal assets, with ironclad provisions to prevent any future attempts at manipulation. We restructured the company leadership, bringing in a talented executive team that shared my values about quality and integrity. Most importantly, I began searching for a new home. Not another mansion, but something that truly reflected who I was now and what I wanted for this chapter of my life. I found it on a sunny Tuesday morning, a 4,000-square-foot modern home on the waterfront, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. It had clean lines, open spaces, and a spectacular kitchen that Margaret would have loved. The master suite included a private deck where I could imagine having morning coffee while watching the sunrise. It was nothing like the mansion in style, but it represented everything the mansion had originally meant to me: achievement, comfort, and the promise of happy days ahead. I made an offer the same day and was delighted when it was accepted. Meanwhile, Amanda and Patrick had been surprisingly quiet. Through the company grapevine, I heard they had rented a house across town and were keeping a low profile. Amanda had reached out once via email, asking if she could pick up some personal items from the mansion. I agreed, scheduling a time when I would be away to avoid an uncomfortable encounter. With 1 week remaining before the mansion sale closed, I decided it was time for the final phase of my plan. I contacted David to ensure everything was legally sound, then composed a letter to Amanda. Not an email, but a formal letter on heavy stationery, the kind Margaret always insisted conveyed proper respect for important communications. In the letter, I explained my actions not with anger but with clarity. I detailed how their behavior had affected me, how the betrayal had cut deeper because it came from my own daughter. I acknowledged that I had perhaps been too trusting, too willing to step aside and let them take control without proper oversight. Most importantly, I left the door open, just slightly, for reconciliation. Not immediately, not without significant changes on their part, but I made it clear that they were still my family, that Tommy and baby Sophie were still my beloved grandchildren, and that Margaret would want us to find a way forward, however difficult that might be. I sent the letter by courier to ensure it reached Amanda personally. Then I focused on preparing for my move. 2 days before I was scheduled to leave the mansion forever, Amanda called. "Dad," she said, her voice small and uncertain, "I got your letter. I thought you might. Can we talk? In person? Just you and me, not Patrick." I hesitated, then agreed. "Tomorrow at noon. The garden bench by what's left of your mother's roses." When she arrived the following day, I was struck by how tired she looked. The polished, confident executive had been replaced by someone who appeared to have been crying for days. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, sitting beside me on the bench. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching a pair of cardinals flit among the remaining rose bushes. "Mom loved those birds," Amanda finally said. "She used to say they mated for life, like you two did. She always put out special seeds for them in winter," I recalled. "Said they deserved extra care for their loyalty." Another silence. "More comfortable this time." "I'm sorry," Amanda finally said. "Those words are completely inadequate, but I need to say them anyway. I'm sorry for how we treated you, for what we tried to do." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. "There's no excuse," she continued. "We got greedy. We saw opportunities and took them without thinking about who we were hurting, without remembering everything you and Mom taught me about integrity and family." "Why?" I asked simply. "We gave you everything. You would have inherited it all eventually anyway. She looked away, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just about the money or the company. It was about control, about feeling important. Patrick convinced me we could do things better, faster, that your way was outdated. And I believed him because it was easier than admitting we were becoming people Mom would have been ashamed of. For the first time, I felt she was being completely honest with me. The comment about your room, she continued, that was Patrick's idea, to start making people question your capabilities. Once I said it, saw how it hurt you, I knew we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But by then it felt like we were too committed to our plan to turn back. And the medication? Would you really have done that? She shook her head vehemently. No, never. That was Stephanie talking, not me. But I didn't shut it down immediately, and that's unforgivable. We sat together as the afternoon sun began to fade. Finally, I spoke again. I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. The new house will be ready by then. Where is it? She asked tentatively. On the bay. Nothing like this place, but it suits me now. Will you? She hesitated. Will you let us know your address? For Christmas cards and birthday gifts for the kids to send. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Behind the tear-stained face, I could still see traces of the little girl who used to run to greet me when I came home from work, who had Margaret's eyes and my stubborn chin. Yes, I said finally. But Amanda, things can't go back to how they were before. Too much has happened. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want a chance to try to make things right, somehow. That will take time, I told her honestly. And actions, not just words. As we parted, she asked one last question. The company. Will you let me earn my way back someday? Not as CEO, I understand that. But in some capacity, that depends entirely on you, I replied. On whether you're willing to relearn the values the company was founded on. She nodded, understanding the challenge I was setting before her. As she walked away, I noticed her shoulders were straighter, her step more purposeful than when she had arrived. Not with arrogance this time, but with what looked like determination. The next day, I finished packing the few belongings I was taking with me to the new house. As I made a final walk through the mansion that had been my home for so many years, I felt surprisingly little regret. The walls that had once held so many happy memories had more recently contained only pain and betrayal. It was time for someone new to fill them with their own stories. I spent my last night in the small suite that had been both my refuge and my prison. In the morning, I placed the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door without looking back. My new life was waiting, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited about what lay ahead. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my waterfront home, watching the sunrise paint the bay in shades of pink and gold. A steaming cup of coffee warmed my hands against the early autumn chill. Below on the private beach, the gentle waves created a soothing rhythm that had become the soundtrack to my new life. The past 6 months had brought changes I could never have anticipated when I first stood up to Amanda and Patrick. The new house had quickly become home in ways the mansion never could have again. I had filled it with a mixture of treasured mementos and new furnishings that reflected my current tastes rather than decades-old decisions. The company was thriving under the new leadership team. We had returned to the quality-focused approach Margaret and I had always championed, and our reputation in the industry was recovering steadily. Several clients who had left during Amanda and Patrick's tenure had returned, impressed by our renewed commitment to excellence. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda, confirming our lunch meeting later that day. These monthly lunches had begun tentatively 3 months ago. Just the two of us rebuilding our relationship, one careful conversation at a time. Today would be different, though. Today, Tommy would be joining us for the first time since everything had happened. I smiled at the thought of seeing my grandson again. Video calls were fine, but nothing compared to being able to hug him in person. Amanda had been respectful of my need for space and time, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. It was one of many signs that she was genuinely trying to change. Patrick, on the other hand, remained distant. He had found a position with a competing firm in another state and seemed content to communicate with me only through formal emails regarding the children. That arrangement suited me fine. Some bridges, once burned, could not be rebuilt. As I prepared for lunch, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The humiliation of that "your room stinks" comment seemed like a lifetime ago. In many ways, it had been the best thing that could have happened to me. It had awakened me from years of passive acceptance, forced me to recognize how far things had deteriorated, and ultimately led me to reclaim my life. The waterfront restaurant Amanda had chosen was one of my favorites, with a spectacular view of the bay and an excellent seafood menu. I arrived early and secured a table on the outdoor patio when I spotted them walking toward me, Tommy running ahead eagerly while Amanda followed with baby Sophie in her arms. Something warm unfurled in my chest. Despite everything that had happened, they were still my family. "Grandpa," Tommy launched himself at me with the unrestrained enthusiasm only a 7-year-old can muster. I caught him in a bear hug, marveling at how much he had grown in 6 months. "Hey, sport, I've missed you." Amanda approached more cautiously, shifting the baby to her hip. "Hi, Dad. Thanks for agreeing to this." "Of course," I replied, reaching out to stroke Sophie's chubby cheek. "She's gotten so big, 10 months old now, and already trying to walk," Amanda said proudly. "She's determined, just like her grandfather." The lunch went better than I could have hoped. Tommy chattered excitedly about school and his soccer team, oblivious to the complicated history between his mother and me. Sophie beamed and babbled, accepting pieces of bread from my fingers with delighted giggles. As the children became occupied with dessert, Amanda broached the subject we had both been avoiding. "I've been meeting with a therapist," she said quietly, "trying to understand why I was willing to hurt you so badly." I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "She helped me see that after Mom died, I was terrified of losing you too. But instead of dealing with that fear, I tried to control everything around me. The company, the house, even you, as if somehow that would keep anything bad from happening again. Fear makes us do strange things," I acknowledged. I was guilty of it too, retreating to that suite instead of fighting for my place in the home Margaret and I built. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her so much, especially now, with Sophie. There are so many questions I wish I could ask her." "I know," I said gently. "She would have been an amazing grandmother." We sat in companionable silence, watching the children. Finally, Amanda spoke again. "Dad, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. I've been offered a position back at the company." This was news to me. "By whom?" "Evelyn Carter, the new CEO. It's an entry-level position in project management. Nothing like what I had before. I'd be starting from scratch, having to earn respect all over again. I considered this carefully." "And you're considering it?" She nodded. "I miss the work, the real work, not just the title and office. But I wanted to check with you first. If it would make you uncomfortable, I'll decline." The fact that she was asking, that she recognized the potential difficulty, showed how much she had changed. "I think," I said slowly, "that Evelyn Carter is an excellent judge of character. If she believes you deserve another chance, I won't stand in the way." Relief washed over Amanda's face. "Thank you. I promise I won't let her down. Or you." After lunch, they followed me back to my new home. I had prepared the guest room for Tommy's first overnight visit, complete with space-themed bedding and a telescope on the private balcony. As Tommy explored excitedly, Amanda stood in the great room, taking in the sweeping views of the bay. "This place suits you, Dad. I can feel how happy you are here." "I am," I agreed. "It's exactly what I needed. A fresh start." Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Amanda and I sat on the main deck, watching the moonlight dance across the water. "I never properly apologized for what I said about your room," she said suddenly. "It was cruel and calculated, and I'm deeply ashamed of it. In a strange way, I should thank you for it," I replied. That comment was what finally opened my eyes to what was happening around me. "Still, I'm sorry. You deserved better from your daughter." I reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. "You know, your mother always said that true strength isn't about never making mistakes. It's about how we recover from them, what we learn, and how we grow." Amanda smiled sadly. She was wise that way. "Yes, she was. And she would be proud of how you're trying to make amends now." As Amanda left for her hotel later that night, leaving the children for their sleepover, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected to find again. The wounds weren't fully healed, and perhaps they never would be completely. But we were finding our way toward a new kind of relationship, one built on hard-earned wisdom rather than blind trust. The next morning, I took Tommy down to the beach for an early walk while Sophie still slept. We collected seashells and watched pelicans dive for their breakfast. "Grandpa," Tommy asked suddenly, "are you still mad at Mom and Dad?" Children, with their uncanny ability to cut straight to the heart of matters. I knelt down to his level. "It's complicated, buddy. Grown-ups sometimes hurt each other without meaning to. Your mom and I are working on fixing things between us." He nodded solemnly. "Mom cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping. She says she misses you and Grandma's house. I miss things too," I admitted. "But you know what? We can build new memories in new places. Like right here, collecting shells with you. This is a memory I'll treasure forever." He seemed satisfied with that answer and ran ahead to chase a sandpiper along the water's edge. Later that day, when Amanda returned to collect the children, I invited her to bring them for Sunday dinners every other week. It was a small step, but an important one. As I watched them drive away, I realized that the inheritance I had taken from Amanda was never just about money or property. It was about teaching her the values Margaret and I had tried to instill in her from childhood, values she had temporarily lost sight of in her quest for control. The dream home I had bought myself wasn't just the physical structure with its spectacular views and modern amenities. It was the peace I had found within myself, the strength I had rediscovered, and the boundaries I had learned to establish. That evening, as I sat on my deck watching another breathtaking sunset, I raised my glass in a silent toast to Margaret. "You were right, my love," I whispered to the painted sky. "Sometimes the hardest choices lead us exactly where we need to be." Life would continue to have its challenges. The relationship with Amanda would require ongoing work from both of us. Patrick might never fully acknowledge his role in what happened, but I had reclaimed my power, my dignity, and most importantly, my future. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance I could leave for Tommy and Sophie. Not money or property, but the example of a man who refused to be diminished, who found the courage to stand up for himself when it mattered most. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own dignity and well-being? Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest personal growth. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more stories about resilience and standing up for yourself. And share this with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your power. Thank you for listening, and remember that your happiness matters too.